The cloud chick Angela Hogaboom joins us this week to break down news from D&H and Trend Micro, business adoption of Windows 11, and some insights from service leadership, plus a special guest interview with Jacob Silutin of Cyberint on the dark web and its culture. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 234, The Dark Upside Down. And welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 234. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for people like you, the VARs, the IT integrators, the IT consultants, the cloud server system analysts, the Windows 365 administrators, the IT people of the world who keep technology and businesses rolling. And if that sounds like something that you do on a regular basis, welcome to the show, one and all. Great to have you. And of course, well, great to have our returning listeners and viewers with us. Always a pleasure. And I hope you are ready for another great show. And who also helps make that happen? The man himself, the one and only executive editor here at Channel Pro, Rich Freeman.
Matt, did you know that Friday, July 29th is System Administrator Day? So as some of the folks you just named in our audience are listening to this show, this is their big day. It's System Administrator Day.
I did not know that. Now, what do you get, like a gift or a card for your system administrator? Like, how are we supposed to celebrate this marvelous and miraculous day?
Yeah, that's a great question. What does the geek in your life most want?
I don't know, but Rich, I'm the quasi IT person here at Channel Pro, so I'm expecting to be showered with gifts and love on this fine Friday.
I will put the word out at Team Channel Pro that Friday is Matt's day, or that show him a little love, folks. Or else I'll shut your email down.
Cash accepted. That's all I'm gonna say. Well, awesome stuff. Great to have you here. Having a good week. I see you're not on the road this week.
I am not. I've been off the road for a while, actually. I'm going back out next week and the week after that. So the travel is going to start picking up a little bit, but I've been home for a while. Yeah,
you don't normally have these long stints at home during the summer, but it's always good to be at home and in your own place doing your thing. But I'm excited because I get to see you next week. That'll be fun.
That's right. Yeah. So next week I'm going to be at the CompTIA ChannelCon event, which is taking place in Chicago, which is not far from where Matt is sitting and working and living right now. So we're going to get some folks together in just a few nights, actually, for dinner, including Matt and his wife, Dawn. It's going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. And of course, Mr. Eric Simpson will be there, who's your other co-host with the 5-Minute Roundup, a podcast that Channel Pro also does that you should check out, which is with Rich and Mr. Eric Simpson. And that's always a lot of fun. Just fair warning, though, it's usually not 5 minutes. It's usually a little bit longer than that, but well worth the listen every time. So Rich, speaking of events and and travel and all that stuff, we also have an event coming up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. That as we record this, that's the week after next. That is August 8th and 9th in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is going to be the fourth of our 6 SMB forum events for 2022. Events.channelpronetwork.com. If you are anywhere near the Charlotte area and available to join us, I really encourage you to do that. We have put together a really tremendous lineup of content. We take pride in the content that we present at these events every year, but I think we've really kind of hit the mark this year in terms of zeroing in on things that people care about, employee recruiting and retention, the M&A market, cybersecurity, building solutions in Microsoft Azure, social media marketing, all of that stuff. We've got great content for you. So like I said, 4th of 6 events that we're doing this year. So still room to get in if you want to join us in Charlotte, North Carolina. That is August 8th and 9th. The 9th is sort of the main day where all that content I was just talking about gets presented. There's some pre-day stuff, though, that's happening on the 8th. It's pretty cool, too. And then beginning of September, we're going to be in the Washington, D.C. area. And the beginning of November, we're going to be in Southern California. And you can find out the dates and sign up and register for all those events.channelpronetwork.com.
Yep, and I'll make that Charlotte one a little easier for you. We'll put a graph up on the screen. If you're watching there on YouTube, or if you're listening, you can go to channelproforum.com/Charlotte. Use promo code CPVIP because it's going to take you right to the registration form. Use that code when you check out. You'll be able to register for free. But trust me, folks, you're going to get a lot out of that event. Make sure that you come and join us. It's well worth it. And there's prizes and there's giveaway. There's all kinds of stuff. But mostly there's a lot of great content, as Rich said, that will help you in many ways. So that is coming up. Wow, really soon. Don't wait. Go do that right now. Rich, I'm also excited to tell you, and you probably knew this because you can see her on the screen, but you know what the other folks here that are listening and watching don't know is that we have an awesome returning guest host today. So excited to have her back. She's always a delight every time she's on. She is the cybersecurity advisor. She's a cloud strategist, a digital transformation expert driven by a passion for implementing new technology in an ethical fashion. She's also the philanthropy co-chair of the Cloud Girls, a group devoted to helping women pursue careers in cybersecurity and STEM fields. Please welcome the cloud chick herself, the one and only Angela Hogaboom. Welcome, Angela.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Rich. Good to be back.
Always a pleasure having you on. And anytime I see your name pop up at one of our events, because you've presented at several of our virtual shows and stuff before, and you've been on the show before, and it's always a delight to see you and to have you on with us. But we've always got new listeners, we've always got new viewers. Take a few minutes and tell us more about you.
Sure. So I'm Angela Hogaboom. I am headquartered in Broomfield, Colorado, where I work from home with lots of different kinds of companies, mostly around cybersecurity strategy and safe technology implementations. I have a huge passion for getting things done, getting them done right, and securing them. And yeah, that's my gig right now.
And a good gig it is. So how did you get the name The Cloud Chick? Did somebody just call you that one day, or did you give that to yourself?
I believe I've actually had the domain for quite a while. It's been a number of years now. And I think it was the result of enjoying a glass of Cabernet on my patio and just messing around in GoDaddy and thinking, man, I really just need something unique. And I said, there's no way this will be available. And it was. And it was one of those buy your domain for a penny kind of things. And I've just had it ever since. I mean, it's probably been 5 or 6 years now that I've had that. So
that's how they get you, though. You buy it for a penny, but you have to renew it for $25 a year.
Well, yeah, and then you build a persona around it, so it's like you can't really get rid of it.
I know. Every time I now own a few domain names that I'm like, oh, I need that for whatever, and then like you still have, and then you realize you have like 9 of them that you're paying for. And it's like, ugh. Yeah, you can't get rid of them. You're right. Once you have it, you can never let it go, which is always kind of a bummer. So you do a lot of consulting work these days, and tell us a little bit more kind of about that and what kind of consulting stuff you do around safe implementation.
Most of the work that I'm doing right now is actually around data privacy and combining data privacy with cybersecurity frameworks, either like NIST frameworks or things like HIPAA. Done some CMMC work in the past, or just different state level regulations. But most of the time I find that what it all comes down to is just good security. And when you have good security that is provided by strong technology, the right solutions from the right providers, then compliance really is just a byproduct of those good practices. And getting there is not as complicated. It's timely, but it's not as complicated as a lot of companies tend to believe it is. It can be done right, and it can be done well for not as much money as businesses often think.
For sure. And are you staying busy outside of the consulting stuff? What are you doing for fun these days?
Oh, we're gearing up for back to school around my house. I've got a 15-year-old and a 4-year-old. So one in high school, one, getting ready for his preschool. But, in the middle of all of that, we've actually spent the summer doing a lot of traveling and really kind of scaling back and just relaxing. So reworking our garden, got some really good patio furniture, like nice sectional for the outside, so I can enjoy my morning coffee with fresh air, which is great. We have hit a couple of mountain towns. We'll actually be going down to Florida here in a couple of weeks before school starts, just for a week on the beach before all of the madness, so to speak. And that's really been kind of the theme of the year for me, has been finally at a point in my career where I love what I do, and I can do it a little more easily because I have learned a lot, and I can take that time to spend with, just with my family and my kids.
That's cool. So you take the kids traveling as well when you go out?
Yep, most of the time.
And then what are the kinds of other destinations that you're going? Like, what was the neatest place you went to over the summer so far?
Actually, it was here in Colorado. We went to Aspen right around Memorial Day. I never really spent any time down there, and just happened to be at a point in time when there weren't a lot of festivals. It wasn't very busy. We didn't have to make reservations everywhere we went. We were able to really just relax and enjoy the mountains, enjoy the swimming pools and hot tubs, and see some really cool sights and eat some really great food. That's always my number one thing, is take me to the place where there is good food that I can't find anywhere else, and and it met everything on my criteria for that. So
very cool. Now, Rich, have you spent any time in Colorado or in Aspen specifically?
I've never been to Aspen at all. I haven't actually spent a lot of time in Colorado, but I've never been to Aspen at all. And I've long been curious about. I'm not a skier, and I don't know if that's
I'm not either.
A big destination. Yeah, and you went over the summer, I take it. I mean,
yeah, we went around Memorial Day. We'll actually probably go again in the fall when the leaves start to change, because I know it's just beautiful out there. But I am also not a skier. Funny enough, I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I moved to Denver, and I have never even been on skis. I've never really had a desire to either.
Well, no one's gonna ever make you. So
you'll find me at the lodge. I'll be at the lodge. I'll do the après ski, not the skiing.
Sitting by the fireplace, a toasty beverage in hand. That is where you'll find
right.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us and being here. I can't wait to get some of your opinions on some of these stories we're going to talk about. Because we got a really, really exciting show coming up. We're going to be talking about some news from D&H and Trend Micro. We've got a couple stories we're going to talk about. One about Windows 11 and business adoption. I think Rich will explain that one. And we're going to be talking about service leadership in some kind of report that Rich will also kind of break down for us. All very, very, very cool stuff. Later, we are going to have this is going to be a can't miss interview with Jacob Silutin. He's the head of sales engineering at Cyberint. And we're going to be talking about the dark web, and specifically not just like stuff that's happening, because of the dark web, but we're actually going to talk about the dark web, what it is, kind of how it works, what the culture is like. And it's fascinating. You definitely stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. So we've got that. We got a whole lot more ahead. So let's strap in and get rolling. Rich, D&H is in the news. They've added some surfaces to business, something about modern. What is this story about?
You got all the keywords in there: Surface, business, D&H. So
I speak in SEO. That's all I need. I just try to hit all the SEO
keywords only.
Yeah. Well, it's all, and it was pretty much on the right sequence. That's going to help for sure. So for some time at D&H, through their cloud marketplace, you've been able to take cloud software like software as a service licenses and devices like laptops, say, combine those with some services from D&H or your own services, create one big bundle. You can incorporate as a service financing for the hardware in that, so that the end user is only paying one monthly sum. So this is a capability D&H, like all the other big distributors, has had for a while. What is new this week is one of your device options is the pretty much the entire Microsoft Surface for Business line of devices. Now, Microsoft Surface devices, the consumer devices, have been available through D&H for a while. They're just now adding Surface for Business devices, which are pretty much identical to the consumer devices, but they've got some additional management functionality, some additional security functionality, and they are compatible with Windows Autopilot, which is a zero-touch remote deployment and configuration tool that is very handy in the era of hybrid work and remote work, because you can pre-configure a device, drop ship it to a customer, and it's all, or an end user rather, and it's all kind of ready to go. Interestingly enough, this change comes in response to requests from partners who wanted the ability to sell Surface for Business devices to their customers, because D&H says their partners are seeing more and more demand for what they called premium level devices. So people who are spending more time on a laptop are are willing to spend a little bit more for premium devices, bigger screens, better cameras and microphones and speakers built in, et cetera. And that is a niche into which the Surface for Business line kind of fits in. Now I asked the D&H folks, do you have these items in stock? Because ultimately that's kind of what determines what you're going to sell your customers these days. Not quite yet is the answer. The shipments are actually on the way. I didn't get a specific date when they're going to have the Surface for Business items in stock, but they're very optimistic, very excited was the word I got about the inventory forecast from Microsoft. So they're expecting devices soon, and they're expecting to be able to keep those devices in stock going forward. Just a quick few words, because this is all being delivered through the Modern Solutions Business Unit at D&H, and that's something that they launched in May. And I have not had a chance to write about or talk about on the podcast until now for various reasons. So just quickly to catch people up if they're not familiar with this, the issue at D&H in the past was, if you knew that you had a customer who needed Microsoft 365 and some laptops and maybe some professional services, you'd call into D&H, and the first question they would ask is, well, what kind of laptops? Well, I don't know. What do you have? Well, you got to pick. You got to give me a manufacturer so that we can point you to a specialist in Lenovo or HP or whatever. And then you would talk to the HP specialist, and you've got a cloud question. They forward you to somebody else, and somebody else for the financing information. And so the idea was, can we just combine information about all of these areas into one group? You place one phone call, you're going to talk to somebody who knows all the different manufacturers, can answer the basic questions about services and financing. And then there are specialists they can connect you to for more complicated answers. But the whole idea was to kind of make it easier, not just to bundle this stuff together and sell it to your customers, but to research it and quote it and buy it and so on. So the Surface for Business devices are sold through the Modern Applications solutions that this business unit offers. They also do Modern Collaboration, which is meeting and video collab systems, Modern Infrastructure, infrastructure as a service, cloud migration, et cetera, and then Modern Security, which is exactly what it sounds like. But this is the latest addition to the Modern Solutions Business Unit. And if you are a fan of Microsoft hardware and you like the way maybe it integrates with Microsoft software, here's another option for you.
Yeah, Surface line. It's a good line of products. They've got that's not just the Surface. They've got, like, the Surface Laptop and the Surface Go and the Surface Pro, and the Studio is a pretty cool one. Although that one's getting a little long in the tooth. I think we need a new Surface Studio model, or at least a refresh of that one at some point soon. But it sounds like all good stuff for D&H partners. Angela, anything you want to add? Any thoughts?
I actually really like this idea, mostly because the way that people are working anymore, we are kind of going back to where we need good computers, good computers backed by really good software solutions to be able to efficiently do the work. And distribution has historically been challenging. And I know for myself, even as a reseller, trying to find the right model number, remember which distributor I needed to call, and, do I like this guy or do I like that guy, and where am I going to get better rates or better service? But to combine all of those common concerns into one arena, I would think would be much simpler than piecemealing solutions together.
Well, it also sounds like it might be a bad thing if you like to sit on hold, because now you don't have to sit on hold anymore and listen to music. So if
that's your jam, like if you're I've got 30 minutes to 2 hours to kill.
Who needs Spotify? You just call some business and be like, hey, just put me on hold. I want to see what's playing.
Just put me on hold for a little bit. Yeah. I want to talk to somebody, but not for 30 minutes.
So, Rich, there's also another note here. We haven't talked a whole lot about PC sales, but it says that there's been a little bit of decline year over year. Tell me about that real quick.
What do you mind if we skip ahead then? Because there's an item on our list here coming up that this is directly relevant to.
Oh, well then we will just have everybody wait patiently. So if you want to know about that kind of stuff, folks, you're going to have to listen or watch a little bit longer. So that's just a little bit of teaser. But yes, we can absolutely move on. And we're going to move on to speaking in SEO terms, Trend Micro Intrusion Container 4, Amazon.
Yeah, well, so this week, actually, Amazon Web Services did their Reinforce event, which is a security event that they hosted in Boston. So there were a number of vendors, actually, that announced AWS-related updates and products and changes and so on. The one we're going to kind of zero in here, it's a couple of different things from Trend Micro, one of which is specific to AWS. The other one applies to that, but also to the other big public clouds. And essentially what they did, they didn't really add new security functionality per se. They made the existing functionality that they've been providing a lot easier and cheaper and more efficient to consume. So we're talking about Cloud One. Cloud One is the sort of Swiss Army knife, all-encompassing cloud security suite from Trend Micro. And they made changes to two pieces of that, the intrusion prevention module and the container security module. So we'll start with intrusion prevention. And the basic idea is actually going to be the same in both places. In the old days, basically, if you had an AWS virtual network and you wanted to use Cloud One to secure it, you had to deploy a virtual appliance inside that network. And what they're doing now is they're saying, throw away the virtual appliance. You're going to replace it instead with a gateway load balancer, much, much smaller, simpler kind of virtual device. And that's going to connect you to a giant virtual appliance in the sky in Trend Micro's cloud. And so now, so like say you've got 10 different virtual networks that you're supporting and securing, and 10 different virtual appliances in there, and you need capacity and compute, and you've got to pay for running all these virtual appliances. Those all go away. They get replaced by these gateway devices, and all the work and the footprint and so that's all now in Trend Micro's cloud. And essentially they're hosting that, they're taking on those capacity and processing costs for you on their dime. And it's all kind of centralized. So a much more efficient way to deliver the sort of service. It's in public preview now. It is only available on AWS because there's some kind of back-end feature that AWS has that the other clouds don't have right now. Trend Micro is actually a launch partner in taking advantage of this capability. On the container security side, similar kind of thing. So, and this is also in public preview, but if you wanted to secure a Kubernetes environment, you had to deploy scanning resources individually into each Kubernetes container that you were trying to secure. Not going to have to do that anymore. You're going to be able to point people to the Trend Micro cloud, centralized, more compact, more efficient, et cetera. This one is available for AWS, Azure, and Google cloud platform right now. All of this is available if you have a Cloud One license for no extra charge. So you're not kind of like paying to take advantage of this functionality. You're just paying less to AWS or the other cloud providers because you don't need as much cloud resource now.
Yeah, I was about to say, it looks like the big upside of using their cloud is just because if you don't have to pay for the processing costs to run that virtual appliance. But how did they say, is the speed still the same? Because I have to imagine if you're running a virtual appliance in the network, that it might be faster. Is it slower having to push it out to another cloud?
We didn't get into it, so I don't know. I suppose that all kind of depends on the interconnects. And so, I mean, I've got to believe they're plugged in tight to AWS. But I don't know, there might be some latency in there. It's just another hop, basically, for things to move around.
Yeah, not sure. Angela, this is like definitely up your neck of the woods there. What do you think?
I was going to say, I imagine that whatever the new lightweight agent is easier to manage for anybody managing that. I know when I worked with managed services providers in the past, addressing AWS as a provider, somebody to manage those environments has been challenging because there are so many components to AWS. And then as far as the rate of transfer, there are some really good technologies that are doing similar things where they have kind of their own private cloud, and you get to transfer off all the risk of that processing power and the administration up to somebody else. And it gives you a few less things to do and actually a better guarantee of security because you have those uptime guarantees, and you get more security. You're not insecure anymore yourself as an administrator, but you get more personal security than making sure that, did I turn something off? Did something get updated properly? I think it's really cool that that they're able to do that. And container security has been, everybody's been trying to race to figure out container security and how to do that appropriately. So this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and Rich, it sounded like if you're a Cloud One customer, this is just included, right?
That's correct. Yep. It's just kind of part of the product now.
Cool. Well, that's cool. Well, we'll put a link to the show notes page at Channel Pro Network, or if you're on your phone, you can open up the description area. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, just hit all the buttons on YouTube if you're there, because then
Not
stuff
the
will happen.
thumb down one. Just
Not the right, except for that button. I forgot about the thumb down one. So every button except that one, and then open up the description area there, and we'll put links to these stories and all this stuff in there, so you can go and kind of get all the fine details in there as well. And there's links off to get more information. So it sounds like a good thing for Trend Micro Cloud One customers. So go and check that out if you're dealing with a lot of stuff in AWS. So Rich, I want to get to the stories because we got a lot of good stuff here to talk about in that, and that is a story. Is this the one that people were waiting for, or is that still the next one?
No. This we kept people in suspense for all of about 5 minutes. Here it comes, folks. Here comes the PC data we were talking about.
Well, let's put them on hold for 5 minutes so they can listen to music, and then we'll come back. And no, Rich, go ahead and I won't even say the keywords of this one. I'm going to leave it all to your glorious unveiling.
We're going to be invisible on Google, but okay. And this issue has been kind of coming up on and off again on the podcast for a number of different episodes here. When you were out on vacation, Matt, we talked a little bit about some just published data from a couple of different analysts indicating a slowdown in PC sales, basically, which dovetailed with something that we knew was going to happen sooner or later. I mean, PC sales remained robust in the market way longer than people predicted back in 2020, but we finally kind of hit the point where it's not like the market's tanking by any means, but it's kind of coming back down a little bit. And Gartner, just as for example, this is what you saw in the D&H story and we're alluding to before. Gartner said that in Q2 of this year, PC sales were down 12.6% year over year, but they were down from really big numbers. An interesting little data point to keep in mind as you think about the future of the PC market, though, and this comes from an article that ran in our July issue. It was written by our colleague Colleen Fry, and it is her quick take on some data, some research from an organization called NextThink. And NextThink went out and they did this kind of big, broad scan online, looking around for devices to kind of figure out how many PCs out there, just to get a sense, how many PCs in use right now are Windows 11 ready? Because Windows 10 goes EOL October 2025, still a ways off. But we remember what happened when Windows 7, it's not as far away as you might think it is. And so they were kind of curious to know how ready are the PCs out there. They investigated 3.12 million anonymized devices across 457 organizations in 8 industries and found that 60% of systems are currently incompatible with Windows 11. And there are 2 issues there. There are CPU minimums you've got to have. That was an issue for 35% of the devices they looked at. There is an operating system requirement. You've got to be on Windows 10 2004 or beyond. 44.2% of PCs out there don't meet that qualification. So there are a ton a ton of devices, a lot of PCs out there that are going to have to be, upgraded, replaced, refreshed at some point in the next 2-3 years, even though we've been through this giant sort of refresh, this purchasing wave in the last 2 years. So the PC market is not, it's not going to hit a dead end. It's not going to be maybe as robust as it was for a while there in the last 2 years, but there is life ahead in the PC market for channel pros.
So yeah, eighth generation Intel processor grader and TPM 2.0 are that's the big thing that makes a lot of computers incompatible with Windows 11. And they didn't necessarily exactly explain why that is a requirement, because a 7th gen Intel computer can run Windows 10 just fine. It should be able to run Windows 11. Angela, what do you think about the specs of that, of Windows 11 requiring that, and how do you see businesses responding to a large chunk of their computing workforce being incompatible with it for an upgrade?
Well, I personally replace my computers, my PCs, probably about every 3 years anyway, and I'm always going for more compute. I mean, even my kids are going for more compute when we have to get them, new machines for whatever reason. My son's a gamer, so it's always something new. But from a business standpoint, it's it's to everybody's benefit to start preparing now. And the new chip requirement, the upgraded chip requirement, could be a foreshadowing of newer technology compatibility that might be necessary with Windows 11 and the future that they're already thinking about now, maybe just not talking about. That's kind of just a shot in the dark out there, but especially when we're talking about Microsoft and how advanced they're getting even in their security capabilities. I would imagine there's good reason for it. But, also to that note, even in the last probably 7 or 8 months, I've still gone into environments that have had Windows 7 computers and maybe an XP here and there. So some folks are going to be like, oh, we'll just stick with what we had before. And I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but there is time to prepare, and now is a good time to be thinking about that before we end up in another shortage in a couple of years.
Yeah, well, I think one thing in here is for certain, and I will bet Rich a cup of coffee at a hotel somewhere that there is no chance in hell the support for Windows 10 will end on October 14th, 2025. That will absolutely get extended.
It'll go another 2 years.
At least. And with that, with as long as it's been in the market, it'll be like another XP or Windows 7. It'll be supported probably for another 5 years past that. That might be a little
end of life. End of life is a great marketing campaign for the 5 years that it lasts.
Right.
So,
and as far as the other requirements,
get ready, but
how many businesses, Angela, because you work with a lot of businesses, how many businesses actually upgrade OSs on their computers? I have to imagine that most of them will just end up, as you said, replacing hardware and just getting the new versions of Windows with new hardware. Or is there a lot of companies that upgrade?
Some of them do. A lot of them will wait for a refresh. Almost none of them do an upgrade when it's time to do the upgrade. When it comes out, they're going to wait a couple versions anyway. It's really the safest bet, and it's usually the IT people who have a personal environment or something that's in a lab or something like that that they use to test with. So yeah, it's kind of all over the board, but computer hardware lately has actually been a bigger conversation. Because at least in the companies that I'm working with, because they're bringing in new people that they have to do that drop shipping. So this conversation about D&H that we had earlier, autopilot is a great tool for something like that. So getting computers to where they need to be, getting them online, having them be current, having current operating systems so that you can support them in real time. I think it's going to be a little bit more critical than in the last time that Microsoft did an operating system upgrade to their PCs, as more people are still working remotely these days, and they will continue to do so. And I think we know that.
Yeah, rough timing of releasing an OS that basically obsoletes a whole ton of what you would say older, but certainly serviceable computers in a time when we have like a lot of things like chip shortages and component shortages and things like that can be hard to get. So it'll be interesting as businesses fight for hardware over the next few years if they're going to stay in sync with this. Now, Rich, you talked a little bit about the downturn. When I was looking at the numbers, like I think we all expected that the desktop and PC market would not be would go down, right? But it's still really high though compared to pre-pandemic numbers, right?
So, I don't have the data right in front of me, but one of the analysts we were talking about in the show a few weeks ago is Canalys, and they published their latest quarterly numbers. And when they broke out the data, so overall the PC market was down. When they broke out the data, the laptop market was way down, and the desktop market was actually up a little bit. If I remember right, it was less than 1%, but it was up a little bit. And so desktops a little bit different, right? So people are coming back to the office still and encountering these 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year, the ancient desktops they left behind when the pandemic began. And so there is still a purchasing wave, I think, happening more on the desktop side and more on the commercial side, which is the other thing worth pointing out, is that all of the manufacturers are saying their consumer PC sales are actually a little on the weak side, but they're still doing okay on the commercial side. The growth numbers are flattening out because the market is becoming a little bit more real now after all that those spikes. But there are still businesses that are buying, and particularly on the desktop side versus notebook.
Yep, those ancient Windows 3.1 desktops when they got back to the office, right after 2 years.
Good old towers. The towers. big
monster. Beige, right? We need to go return to the era of beige computers.
Yeah.
Why was every computer beige back in like the 90s? I don't know. I'd be very curious to find that out, why they were all beige. Anyway, rather than drawn on that, really interesting story. Rich, anything else you want to add on this before we move on?
No. We have finally scratched that itch for listeners now. Here's what you were waiting for.
Angela, anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right, well, let's move on then to our last story that we want to talk about, and that is about service leadership. So it's 5 insights from a report. Rich, tell us about this report.
So this is the annual IT solution provider industry profitability report from Service Leadership. There are going to be a lot of folks in the audience here are familiar with Service Leadership. For those who aren't, they might be more familiar with the name Paul Dipple. Service Leadership is the company that he founded and ran. ConnectWise bought Service Leadership last year. But they continue to consult with MSPs, and they continue to have one of the deepest pools of data about channel pros, not just MSPs, but VARs, that I at least am aware of. You see reports like this come from various vendors. Typically, they're based on data that's collected from, let's call it 500 to 1,000 companies on kind of a one-off basis. Service Leadership is collecting data from thousands of companies in 102 countries every quarter. And the questions that they ask about are pretty consistent. So they have this really great pool over time of information about a lot of different companies that gives you a better sense for what's really happening out there. And the big top line on what's happening out there, this is all, it's the 2022 report, but they're really talking about 2021 in it. And as they said, 2021 was an extraordinary year for anyone in the channel. Basically, any kind of IT service provider. Revenue was up on average 8.8%. Adjusted EBITDA was up 13.5% in 2021. For MSPs, even better. 16% average revenue growth for MSPs last year, 15.5% average adjusted EBITDA up. So as the folks at Service Leadership said, great year, and it speaks to a very healthy industry. The world, as we all know, discovered just how badly it needs IT and IT service providers 2 years ago, and that the trend that kicked off in 2020 continued strong into 2021. As you get into the data a little bit more, though, there are some interesting insights, some little nuggets in there. And so let's just talk quickly about some of those. I mentioned the numbers for MSPs very strong overall, and service leadership gives some of the credit to that, to the fact that MSPs have just been around for a while now, and they're learning how to do what they need to do through experience. And so people are getting better at pricing, for example, and some of the other operational aspects of running a business, and that gets reflected in the revenue growth and the EBITDA growth that you're seeing there. But there's also, they pointed out, a huge delta, a big gap between what they call the best-in-class MSPs and the bottom quartile MSPs. So best-in-class means you are in the top 25% for MSPs in profitability, and bottom quartile means you're in the bottom 25% from a profitability standpoint. Gross margins on services in 2021, if you were in the top quartile, those averaged 49.4%. If you were in the bottom quartile, those averaged 38%. And so, as service leadership said, a different way to think of that is, for every dollar of service revenue, best-in-class MSPs kept around 11 cents of profit more than those in the bottom quartile, which is a pretty significant gap. This is even more striking. So overall, profitability was up for MSPs in aggregate. But if you look at the profitability of the best-in-class MSPs, it was up 20 to 25%. If you look at the bottom 25%, their profitability was flat or just barely breaking even. So 0% profit growth in the bottom quartile versus 20 to 25% in the top quartile. And the interesting thing, and this is a long-standing refrain from service leadership, this doesn't have anything to do with where you're located, big city, small city. Doesn't matter if you are a sole proprietor, you have 2 employees or 50 employees, what kind of customer you sell to. They can find you best in class and worst in class MSPs in any of those categories. It all breaks down to operational maturity, how well you do things like quarterly business reviews. I won't even get into the specifics, but in this article we're referring to, they kind of talk about here's how the top quartile handles QBRs, and the bottom quartile, and this I thought was kind of amusing. This is no joke. Every now and again, service leadership gets asked by somebody probably in the bottom quartile, how often should I be doing quarterly business reviews? Think about that just a little bit. The answer is in the question. You know what? For years, we've been told, if you're a VAR, get out of that business model and become an MSP. That is where it's all about. And sure enough, revenue was up 16% for MSPs last year. It was only up 0.7% for VARs last year, which doesn't sound great. But on the other hand, that's the 5th straight year of revenue growth for VARs. And according to service leadership, at least, if not for all the supply chain nightmares out there, this could have been a record year for VAR. So it's actually, they told me that they are bullish on both models. You can make money as a VAR, you can make money as an MSP, you can make money doing both of those things. The VAR model is not dead. Mergers and acquisitions. So as we know, interest rates have been going up, and this has implications potentially for the M&A market out there, which, last year, according to service leadership, company approximate valuations were up 29% year over year. So company valuations in the mergers and acquisition market up a record amount, a huge amount. And the question then becomes, is that going to continue to be true now? Because interest rates are up something like 2.25%, 2.5% just this year. Based on what they're hearing and seeing at service leadership, valuations are holding up pretty well. They probably not growing nearly as well as they were last year, but they're not seeing any slack there. And I quote in the article some data from Abe Garver. Abe is from Focus Investment Banking. He works with acquirers and sellers on managed services M&A. One of the most informed authorities on that topic I know of. He's spoken at our events before, and he says basically valuations are holding up pretty well, despite, we're seeing the stock markets get crushed. We're seeing big tech companies like Twitter and Facebook, and they're all having headwinds. But so far, it's still looking like a robust market for MSPs out there. And then finally, this was interesting too. So thanks to all of that M&A activity, a lot of it coming via private equity investments, we do know that there are all sorts of these bigger MSPs coming into being now, companies with regional and national reach, millions and millions of dollars of revenue and so on. And there is this thought that the industry is maybe beginning to consolidate a little bit, and that it's difficult, or going to be difficult, to be successful as a smaller MSP. So here's some data. This is where it becomes useful, basically, to collect data the way service leadership has for as long as they have. So let's look back at 2014. In 2014, 79.3% of MSPs did less than $5 million in revenue a year. In 2021, that was 68.5%. So it's down, but it's down, not down enormously. In 2014, 86.6% of MSPs did 10 million a year or less. In 2021, 82.2%, down, but not down very much at all. And the lesson to be learned there, per service leadership, is that this industry is still dominated by companies in that, under 3 million, under 5 million kind of range. Just from a percentage standpoint, the number of companies out there, it is smaller MSPs still, despite the formation of these larger companies. And so it remains very much viable to be a smaller MSP if you are operationally mature and be very profitable and very successful.
I wonder how much of that 68.5% is actually under $1 million a year. What would you guess?
Boy, I don't know. A lot, would be my guess. They've got that data. I haven't received the full report yet from them. I'm waiting. It's apparently 245 pages, and I'm just the kind of loser who will sort through every last one of them, and it'll be in there, Matt. That figure will be in there somewhere.
Yeah, because it's still really there's a lot of small, very small, single operation, MSPs out there that operate just within a local area. So I have to imagine a huge chunk of that. But that's a 10% drop from those less than 5 over a 8-year period. And there's been some. I think that some of it's been M&A, and Angela, argue with me if you like. Some of it's been M&A. Some of it is, I think, just been growth of MSPs. There's a lot more businesses that's now using managed services providers for IT needs than there was back in 2014. I think it's far more common now. So I think some of that growth is attributed there. Angela, I want to turn it over to you. Rich gave a lot of numbers. What stood out to you?
The difference between a high performance and not high performance, I won't say low, but not high performance, is that operational maturity. And the specific example of doing your QBRs is so critical. I have had circumstances where I've brought in an outsourced provider for the management of something, and sometimes it's security and sometimes it's IT. And you bring them in and you want the low cost provider, for one function or something. And then sometimes you pay more for a more enterprise level service. I've fired both because of that lack of operational maturity. Not getting the account meetings, not being able to have the critical conversations, the critical business conversations that you should be able to have with your provider. And in a lot of cases, I have let go of a provider that was a reasonable cost, and then brought in somebody else and paid them double or triple the monthly recurring revenue, because they would guarantee something like a monthly meeting or a quarterly business review with the right metrics and analytics to justify a service and their performance of that service. And then I would add to that, measuring that success is really important too. So sending out the Net Promoter surveys and the CSATs to find out, get a good temperature check on how you're doing with your customer base. that can actually make a really big difference, because it will compel conversations that maybe you haven't had yet. And it's a way to start, it's a way to start a measuring post and get to that increased maturity, especially in the relationship with a customer.
Very interesting. And what are your thoughts when he was talking about the VAR market, with those who are just VARs doing well? Do you still see a lot of do you still see a lot of value to that model?
I do. I definitely have some disties that I work with, and some VARs that I still maintain relationships with. And for the most part, the ones that I work with are just happy to be able to do that, be able to have that function and be able to provide that service without having to make the commitment of being a managed provider. It's a lot of liability when you want to go that route, and it turns your business into something completely different. But I still think it's a sustainable model, and again, very relationship based. So, I will work with people that I trust. Most of my customers will work with people that they trust, and having a solution or a go-to person or a go-to VAR company that you can reach out to it still matters a lot, especially to people who are in procurement and IT, and looking for solutions in software.
Yeah, interesting. Rich, you kind of walked us through the totality of this, and there's a lot of data here, and I'm sure we'll put a link to this as well, so people can kind of start digging through more of the numbers. But what stood out to you or surprised you about these findings?
Well, I too, the thing that really kind of struck me was that the gap between the profitability in the top quartile and the bottom quartile. And I mean, it's very easy to lose sight of the fact when you're looking at these kind of industry-wide aggregate numbers that show, hey, it looks like the industry's doing really well, and it is, but that will hide some big disparities in terms of how companies are doing. And even in this robust market for managed services, for example, there are still plenty of people out there who are struggling because they're still at a stage where they're learning how to do some of these operational things that will make you more profitable. I'm going to give you one more stat. I skipped right over this, and this is the one that is most directly relevant to what Angela does. Actually, it has to do with security, and this concerns the difference between top quartile and bottom quartile MSPs. And remember that that's about profitability. So top 25% by profit, bottom 25% by profit. But what they found is the top 25% by profit of MSPs get 11.9% of their revenue from managed security as of last year. And in the bottom quartile, 4.4% of revenue from managed security in 2021. And the difference, the issue, and this is a kind of an operational maturity issue, basically, is that the less well-performing, the bottom quartile MSPs, basically, are selling security in what service leadership calls a cafeteria style, where you can kind of take this and take that, or take neither of the above. And the best in class, the top 25%, and this, by the way, it reminds me of Vince Tinarello, who was on the show just a few weeks ago and said, I'm not giving anyone the option anymore. It's just, here's my bundle. Here's what you're going to get if you do business with me. And it includes this complete stack of security software. And we're not even negotiating that anymore. The full meal deal versus the cafeteria deal is what the best in class folks out there do. And when you do that, you're getting more revenue because you're selling the whole stack and you're selling it to everybody, and you're going to be more profitable because they're going to have fewer incidents to resolve, basically. So that good example of how operational maturity kind of plays out in real life.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? We have an interview coming up where if you think that you should still be selling security optionally, after this interview, you will never sell security. You will make it part of your core offering. Angela, it's 2022. Should MSPs, shouldn't they all just be bundling in security at this point as a non-optional?
Absolutely. Thing? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should, in my mind, because I work in, within these frameworks and things that say that, I can't go to the doctor's office without having them MFA before they get into my file. So, MSP should hold themselves to a standard, and maybe someday there will be a regulatory standard or something where they have to be providing secure services and mandating that their clients do the same. And it seems like a no-brainer to me, and I've seen it work better that way anyway, because you're positioning yourself as an authority, you are providing that security. And Rich is absolutely right. If it's in that report, that you have fewer incidents to resolve when you actually are implementing security, which means the phone is ringing a little bit less against your time and materials. Your people will be happier because they're not rushing to answer the phone and meet SLAs. And then, ultimately your clients have more satisfaction because they're not, they've got the peace of mind as well, knowing that you're taking really good care of them and their security needs too.
And it's profitable, right?
It's very profitable, and they want to have the conversation. I haven't met anybody who's been like, no, I don't want to, I'm not worried about security. They're all concerned about it. Sometimes you just haven't opened the door to the conversation, and then they go buy it from somebody else who's going to require that they have it or something like that. So you have to have the conversation. And yeah, I absolutely think it should be a requirement.
Absolutely. Well said. And if your customer doesn't think they need it, then all you need to do is have them listen to the interview that we're gonna have in just a moment with Jacob Silutin, the sales head of engineering at Cyberint. By the end of this interview, they will be convinced security is in their best interest. That is a guarantee. And without further ado, we're not even gonna wait. We're just gonna go right to that. Stick around. We will be right back. Are you an MSP who is recommending Dell hardware to your end users? If so, then you'll want to check out the Dell Expert Network. The new Dell Expert Network program is a rewards and incentives program designed for service-focused MSPs who are supporting the small business market. This program is designed to deliver value and save time for MSPs who are recommending their end users to purchase Dell hardware. Currently, Dell Expert Network customers get an additional 3% back in Dell rewards when they buy Microsoft servers. Check out the Dell Expert Network today. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Got a great guest interview lined up for you, and Rich and Angela are still here with us on the other side. Now, we all know that the dark web is the place where cyber criminals coordinate attacks and distribute malware and phishing kits, among other malicious and often illegal activities. But how does the dark web actually work? And do you really know anything about it? Well, here to give us a glimpse into the dark web and its culture is Jacob Silutin, head of sales engineering at Cyberint. Welcome, Jacob.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Very excited to have a conversation because the dark web is a very interesting topic, and I love how this is kind of set up because a lot of people they've heard of the dark web, right? Where we need to protect ourselves from things that are on the dark web. But sometimes when you ask people well, do you know what the dark web is? And they really have no idea. It's like some kind of magical place, on the other side of the world where hackers and hoodies gather, and it's really not any of that thing. But you're going to tell us about that. But before you do, tell us a little bit more about you and what you do at Cyberint.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me. My name is Jacob. I head the sales engineering team here in Cyberint and the Americas region. I've been with Cyberint for the last 10 months. Before that, I worked for a number of other threat intelligence vendors. My background is from the military and from the intelligence services in Israel, where I spent roughly 10 years in total. Military, special operations, and intelligence, surveillance, counter-surveillance in the Israeli intelligence services.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about the military background, because it seems like a lot of people who are into cybersecurity often originate in the military. How did that prepare you, and what was that like?
Yeah, so my background is not in a traditional sense, the regular Israeli military type of route where everybody serves within the army capacity, serve in the intelligence collection units, 8200s and those units. I come from special operations where I did real life intelligence collecting, with binoculars and cameras and those types of stuff. And then when I joined the intelligence services, all we did was collect intelligence, human, Visint, comment, all types of intelligence that are collected, mostly in a tactical fashion, and then brought back to HQ, analyzed, and we had the desk people to do all the analysis on all the intelligence we brought in. But I was part of the field operatives that were out there bringing the intelligence, and slowly I kind of transitioned within the organization. I slowly transitioned into cyber intelligence. I figured, okay, when I leave the organization, I want to have something, that grown-ups do, like cyber, and not, come out and be like, oh, okay, what am I doing now? So I asked to transition into cyber, and this is where I learned about cyber intelligence, cyber security as a general, and cyber intelligence as something that that I'm more used to. And I can tell you that that type of intelligence I was collecting before and the type of intelligence we're collecting now, and the frameworks around them are very, very similar, practically the same. So that experience I had in the military and the service really translated well into what I do today.
Very, very neat. And I guess you probably don't need a lot of cameras and binoculars to gather cybersecurity intelligence.
Different tools, same outcome, but different tools.
Same idea, right?
Yeah.
Very neat. Well, why don't we go ahead and kind of transition into the topic at hand, what we want to talk about, and that's the dark web. And I will kick off the discussion with a simple question. What is the dark web?
That's a great question, and that's a question that not a lot of people know the answer to. As you mentioned, everybody knows the dark web. There is a dark web, but the dark web essentially is a place which is accessible via specific tools. You'll need to have some tools on your endpoint in order to access that place, and it's comprised out of websites, forums, chat rooms, just like the ones we use in real life, but they're in just behind some sort of anonymity wall that is not hard or complicated to get to, but you just need to know how to get there. The dark web, it's an ecosystem, just like any other, let's say, like any other country or big corporate, or a group of people that work together. So there's currency, there's exchange, there's managers, and there's soldiers. There's hierarchies. The best way to kind of describe it is a parallel universe where people just are very, very similar to what we do here, but the topics are different, the culture is different. It's kind of like going to a country you've never been to and trying to figure out the conversion rate of your currency versus the new country currency. Are you supposed to look left and right when you cross the street, or right and left when you cross the street? Are you supposed to say hello, shake somebody's hand, not shake their hand? Like it's a different culture that you really need to understand in order to exist there.
So, there are certain tools you need to even find the dark web. And then once you've got those tools, you've got to find these sites and chat rooms and places where stuff is being sold and conversations are being had. And there's presumably no Google for the dark web. I mean, how does somebody acquire the knowledge to find these sites? And then how hard is it for them to gain access to these sites? Mm-hmm. Do you have to kind of, do you just open an account somewhere, or is there some process to even kind of get in and be allowed into the conversation?
So it really depends on the different tiers and the different information you want to get access to. So first of all, as you mentioned, these sites, right, these locations, these forums are not indexed by any tool. Some people are trying to index them manually, right? You have, for example, if you want to find the ransomware groups sites, there are plenty of indexes in the clear web, right? You can Google ransomware index, ransomware index, and find a list of ransomware groups, Club, Conti, and the rest of the gangs, and find the URLs that are matching them. You take this URL, go into the Tor browser on your virtual machine on your red endpoint that is not connected to your network, is not connected to your personal information. Blank machine. I'm just saying this as a disclaimer if somebody wants to try that after. You take this URL, you post it there, and it goes to the site. Now, it's not, these URLs are a very, very long string, and usually they end up with .onion, and they're not indexed. And the reason they're not indexed is that you don't have like a map, like you have IPs to websites in the clear web. Like you can type Google and it will take you to the associated IP. There's no map of that sort in the Tor browser. This is why you have to type in the entire URL. Once you get there, some sites are just open access. For example, all the ransomware, most of the ransomware websites, you can go in and just, if they are, if they have distributed information about their victims, you can just click on the download button and download them. Some of the ransomware groups have counters, very, very, kind of nice UIs to their websites, because they want to showcase that if they're attacking a victim, they have 24 hours and counting type of thing to pay the ransom, or else they'll distribute their files. So these websites are open to anybody who can access them. Some forums require login, so you just create a login and password and you can log in and view everything. And some forums, the more advanced ones, require a little bit more authentication in the form of show us your work, show us your resume. We need somebody to vouch for you from inside the forum so you can get in. One of the things that we do all the time at Cyberint is we maintain those personas in those different places. So then if a new forum pops up, we can use the persona that we have already, people who vouched for the persona, people who already know this persona, then we can access the new forum and then collect intelligence from the new forum. So to kind of summarize, there are different tiers. Some of the things are just accessible, just click on the website and you're there. And some of them require a little bit more work.
What are the, let's say, speaking in hypotheticals, because I know there's YouTube videos and there's the Google and there's the Reddit and all of that, those kinds of things. So you're talking about these tiers of access that you can, that you can ultimately end up in. What are the dangers of, just a regular person finding something on Reddit about, hey, go download this tool and it's going to get you into the dark web where you can, cause all this virtual mayhem, gaming mayhem, let's call it, maybe not even ransomware or something. I mean, what are the dangers of learning how to do this and executing something without really knowing what you're doing because you don't understand the network, or, how it could work if you're on your home network where your bank information is stored and things like that? So
first, there's the let's say classic cybersecurity related issues that can come up from visiting those places without proper preparation. Red laptop, as we call it, like a separate machine that is not connected to your network. On that machine, a virtual machine that you can wipe, not having anything personal related to your being, who you are, your persona on that machine. These are all best practices and definitely should be followed when you want to do this. So the risks are based on these best practices, right? A threat actor could understand that you're not part of the gang and maybe want to get your personal information, expose you, create some negative sentiment on you, and even worse, collect your personal information, go to your bank account, apply for a loan, or collect your personal information and do something else malicious. Not talking about getting your machine infected with malware and having to deal with that. The other danger that can cause all of these things is going in there, even though you're prepared, even though you follow all the best practices, going in there and not being part of the culture, not being part of where you are. So I remember working with the Israeli agency, traveling to all sorts of places where I was the only person with my skin tonality and my height and my way of looking. And all of the people in the street even though I wasn't doing anything suspicious, right? I was just minding my own business. All the people on the street that passed by, double clicked on me, as we say, like took 2 looks to see what I'm doing, because I wasn't part of the culture. The same thing applies on the dark web. First, you need to speak the language of the community. So Russian, Farsi, Arabic, Mandarin are the most common languages. And of course, threat intelligence vendors always support those languages, hopefully. Me, personally, I speak Russian as well. So I'm very, very well versed in the Russian parts of the dark web. But not only do you need to speak the language, I speak to my parents or I speak to my sister, you also need to speak the slang. You need to know all of the terminology. You cannot just say, hello, dear friends, I'm here to find accounts for sale because I want to attack organization A and B. Best regards, Jacob. It will not work this way. You need to understand the terminology for accounts. You need to understand the terminology for money laundering. You need to understand the terminology for cracking, hacking, and so on. It's not, you can be there, but you'll have to, what a lot of people do in the industry is they actually use dictionaries. Like we have a dictionary that translates money laundering into the actual phrase that you use in Russian or in Arabic. So that's the danger of being there and not speaking the language. It's very, very easy to be compromised. And then all of the risks that I mentioned at the beginning could potentially happen to you. And it's even worse, I believe, than just being there unprotected, but actually being there and exposing yourself as somebody not from the community.
What is really fascinating about this to me, so there are certain things you can say and do that will signal you belong there, but nobody really knows who you are. Like Cyberint has these personas that are fake people on the dark web, and I mean nobody knows who anyone is essentially on the dark web. Correct. And whether they really are who they say they are, and yet somehow or another there has to be a certain amount of trust in order for the market on the dark web to work. Last week, a week ago to the day, actually, perfect timing, HP Wolf Security published some research, and it included some statistics that kind of go to this. It just raised an issue that I hadn't even really thought about before. You've got people who you cannot identify doing business together in this place. And so they said on the dark web, 77% of cyber criminal marketplaces analyzed require a vendor bond, a license to sell, which can cost up to $3,000. 85% of marketplaces use escrow payments. 92% offer dispute resolution services.
Correct.
So somebody could sell you, I assume, stolen passwords, and if they turn out to be bad passwords, how do you get your money back? There's no law enforcement. I mean, talk a little bit about how trust and contracts and business relationships work in the dark web.
So that's a very good point, because as you mentioned, everything is anonymous, and it works both ways, right? I can sell you passwords that will turn out to be not usable, and you can not send me money or send me half of the sum. So that's a great not a great, but it's an interesting problem that people are trying to resolve in those communities. And one of the things that they came up with is escrow accounts, which are usually moderated by the forum admins. So the admin in the forum is the most powerful figure there. He's like the mayor of the town. And he's so powerful that he can, ban people for X amount of time or ban them for life from a specific forum. So imagine if you're in a shopping mall and a shopping mall manager comes up to your store and says, that's it, you're done. You cannot no longer sell your shoes in this store. And you have a lot of customers. You have a lot of people that come to your store to buy shoes. If the manager of the mall says you cannot sell any more shoes, in one day, your revenue goes to zero. And that's exactly the type of power those admins have in these forums. So they're trying to keep it for a lack of a better term, fair. Nothing that's going on there is fair, right? It's all criminal activity, but they try to keep it fair, and they themselves act as the escrow accounts and a lot of times. So the admin will say, I want to help you facilitate this deal between actor 1 and actor 2. Actor 1 is selling to actor 2. Actor 1 will send the admin a sample of the goods, whether it's passwords, access codes, whatever. The admin will verify and then tell threat actor 2 they're good, send the money. Threat actor 2 will send the money to the admin. The admin will verify the sum and send the money to threat actor 1 after he completes the sending of all the rest of the information. So all of these deals are facilitated this way. Some deals are, depending on the sum and depending on the forum and depending on the format. But most of the bigger deals that are a few hundreds of dollars and thousands and so on, they're usually facilitated in this way. And let's not forget, the admin who's facilitating this also takes a fee. So it's usually 3% to 5% fee on top of what the buyer is paying. And they can also work out who's paying the fee. Sometimes they do 50-50. But the admin facilitates those deals. And a lot of times there are cases that behave like a very court-like behavior. Like people will go to court, claim, this is my claim. I was supposed to pay X amount of money for Y amount of logs, but I only got Y minus 30% logs. I sent additional emails. I followed up. I, did all these things. Here's my recollection of memories of what I did. Person B responds, and admin is kind of like the judge, paid him or return him the money and so on. And it usually works very well because the admins can ban certain people for a certain amount of time. They say, you're banned for 1 week until you pay what you owe or until you send the files you promised. And then after 1 week of being banned and completing the transaction, the admin also vouches back for the person saying, this guy is okay. He paid his due. There was a misunderstanding. No harm, no foul. Let's go. Or you're banned forever. And then going back to our shopping mall example, your shoe store is closed forever. Find business elsewhere. You lost all your credibility and all your ways to earn money in my shopping mall. So that's how they resolve those disputes and how they overcome the total anonymity that's going on in the forums.
Well, even though they're criminals and, therefore dishonest by nature, but I think what keeps them honest in that group is as you mentioned about personas, and it takes a long, and I think reputation is probably very important, right? And it takes a long time to build reputation. So if you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by having to start a whole new persona over again and rebuild that reputation. Is that what's going on there too?
Correct. A lot of times the personas transfer from one forum to another. So FBI and other government agencies are always in pursuit after these admins. And sometimes, and you hear that on the news all the time, this guy was arrested, that girl was arrested. Like they always get people arrested, and those forums always close and being shut down by the government. So raid forums, for example, was recently shut down. And all of the members from raid forums migrated to a new forum called breach.io. And a lot of them in their handles saying, my new name is Dark Jacob 1, formerly known as Dark Jacob back there in raid forum. So I don't you start with 0 in the new forum because, credits don't transfer. It's not like you're starting a new college, but you can mention your previous alias in the previous forum, and then people say, oh, is that guy, he's cool, I've done business with him in the past, or he's known to be a very, very credible distributor of passwords or whatever it is you're dealing. So reputation is very important, and there are some mechanisms that allow you to build your reputation. So if you're a brand new threat actor, you can start, but you can start small, and we see that a lot of the times. You can start small by combining different things that you've that were already known, call them your own, taking one data dump, another data dump, putting them together and saying, hey, here's a new data dump. And then you get 1 point. Then do something else, kind of like repeat some activities, get 2 points, get 3 points. And then where you're a little bit more mature, you can do something of your own, and then it kind of exponentially builds up on that. So we see that a lot of the times, and it makes our job as threat intelligence vendors a little bit harder, because we see those recycled pieces of information being claimed as the new leak or the new data dump but it's not new. It's just recycled things, and this is how these threat actors build up their reputation. Another way is to showcase to the admins that you have, for example, a 0-day, or you have information that you've obtained from Microsoft or from Google. You have some sort of hacking experience. You can show samples to the admin, and the admins will add points to your reputation. And in some cases, it's even required. When you're logging in, creating an account, you have to show a part of your portfolio. And so you automatically get a higher tier if your work is good.
And this applies to every individual forum. So if you wanted to be a part of multiple forums, you'd have to, essentially reprove yourself in the manner required of each individual area. How many, for some of these people, let's say an intermediate hacker, how many forums do they tend to be a part of, and knowing that there's only 24 hours in a day?
So there are a lot of threat actors that focus on just one. Breach.io, for example, is huge, and there are many threat actors that just make their living by spending their time there. I would say that the average will be having good access, like top tier access with reputation, to between 5 to 10 forums. And it really depends on the if the person is the man of the big world. Like if he wants to go to, let's say he's from Russia or from Ukraine, he wants to go to the Ukrainian forums and the Russian forums, and he also wants to venture into the Arab-speaking forums, because it's you'll have to learn a brand new language and a brand new culture. So some individuals are very intelligent and they can learn other languages, but most threat actors try to stay within their zones. And I would say between 5 to 10 forums will be a good number to be in. And most of them are in the same language as well. So, or maybe 2 languages, English and another language.
So
Incredible.
one
It's
of the
like
things
the
I've
upside
only,
down of
I'm sorry.
upside down of the internet. Like, have you seen Stranger Things? I'm like, just backwards,
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So one thing I'm curious about, because I've only recently kind of begun becoming aware of it. I just tend to think in terms of threat actors, in general. But my understanding is there's actually kind of a division of labor in the dark web. There are the people who do nothing but steal credentials, and the people who steal social security numbers, and the people who report 0 days, and the people who buy this stuff and use it to create exploits. Can you talk a little bit about the different roles in the dark web? So
there are people who operate and own and operate marketplaces, and their sole purpose is to sell product X, for example, social security numbers. So there are forums, or I wouldn't call it forums, it's a marketplace, just like you go on Amazon or eBay, when you have lists of social security numbers that are obtained from various sources, and the admins of this marketplace, their role is just to get more and more and more and more social security numbers, or more and more and more credit card numbers. And with a very friendly UI, you can search for the person you want to get the social security number of, or the credit cards you want. For example, if you want a Bank of America credit card with expiration date of July 26, with a person whose address is in Connecticut, and add all this information, put it in the field, in the search field, and get all these credit cards. Click on the little shopping cart to add them to your cart, and click buy. So some people operate this way, and they're collecting, and these transactions are very minor, right? They're like $10, $7. You'll be surprised how much a social security number, how much a persona of a person costs in the dark web. All your information can be bought for $20. Talking about your social security number, address, phone number, credit card, everything. $10 to $20. If you're Barack Obama, maybe it will cost more, but a regular person, $20. That's what it costs. So these people rely on smaller transaction, but with a higher volume. So in day out, that's what they do. Some people do a little bit more complex work, but they do it also on a large scale, meaning looking for passwords, looking for 0 days. These types of things go usually from hundreds to thousands of dollars. And some people specialize in one thing. Put aside the ransomware groups that only do ransomware, and they also go for the big bucks. They don't do, even though we are seeing also a trend of going after the smaller enterprises when it comes to ransomware. Now ransomware is also sold as a service. So anybody can go in and say, I want to target company A. This is the ransom I want to take. This is the time I want to give them. Go, and the ransomware group does that for you. And of course, you pay a fee for that. So that's another line of business. And the top tier actors, they go for 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs a year. They get something very, very substantial. They sell it for a few tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they just do that twice a year, once a year maybe. Also due to the fact that it's hard to get the information that they're getting, and this is why they're selling it at such a high price. And also they also want to keep it on a low side of interaction, visibility. They don't want to be so exposed. So they do this one thing or 2 things a year, and really sustains them. Another interesting vector that we recently discovered is a forum called Industrial Spy. And that forum is for employees of companies to go in and sell their own company's information. So a regular person can go in and say, I work for Microsoft, I have credentials for Microsoft, I have a list of employees, I will sell it for $100, $200, whatever. Of course, because it's all anonymized, there's very little risk for that employee to be identified. But again, there's also tiers there. There's a free section when everybody can go in and review. There's a tier 2 section where prices range between hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. And there's a premium section. The last time I checked, there were 2 entries there, one for $350,000 and one for $400,000. So imagine what type of information is being sold there for $400,000. I would say intellectual property for sure, something very like the secret of the company is being sold for $400,000. So that's another business vector that people can do, but it ranges, right? It ranges. You can, just like our shopping mall example, you can sell sodas and fries and burgers for $10, and you can sell Teslas for $90,000, whatever they cost.
Maybe it's the secret recipe to Dr. Pepper.
Maybe I'm pretty sure it's
Colonel
something like
secret
that.
spices.
Right. You never know what it could be. So you did say that the way these forums and groups are kind of organized, that they do tend to stay within their own, I would say, or at least their own language set for the most part. Do you find that the vast majority of victims being targeted in these different groups are is it everywhere, all over the world? Do they look to target the US more? because if you're getting social security numbers, you're targeting U.S. citizens at
Yeah.
that point. But how directed is the let me rephrase that. How broad is the victim set? Is there favoritism towards certain groups or not? And are certain geos targeting certain other geos more?
It really depends on what's going on in the world politically. Before the Ukrainian-Russian war, the Russian threat actors and the Ukrainian threat actors were targeting each other to some extent, but also targeting the US a lot more, targeting Europe and the Middle East and Africa, but they were busy going outside. Now, the Ukrainian and Russians are just targeting each other mostly. And that's because of what's going on in the political sense. And you see the shifts in geolocation targeting based on political events that are happening in the world. Take, for example, the last election in the United States, Trump and Biden. There was a lot of targeting against the US, and not just election related, but all sorts of things. Just riding the wave of, okay, there is a political upset in the US right now, so people are most susceptible to fraud, attacks, giving away their information, and so on. I can tell you that I've been recently looking into some ransomware groups, and they are all over the place. I was just recently researching a attack of one ransomware group against an organization in the UAE. And the UAE were like, hey, you know, we're part of the Arab countries. We're maybe a little bit more, you know, not such a big target because we're like part of the Arab countries. But it turns out that threat actors, I think these are Russian threat actors, targeted the UAE. They targeted one specific company that has ties to the government and exposed a lot of government information. So they're expanding into various geolocations, and there are a few patterns, but they're getting very, very blurry right now. The main things and the things that I think will always stay is Russia, Ukraine, China, and United States kind of going against each other all the time.
Really interesting. We've talked a lot about Tor specifically, which is probably the most prevalent dark web network, if you will. But there are others than just Tor, right?
Tor is the main one. There are other browsers that are used. I don't know about a lot of other people who use other browsers, but Tor is the most common one, and it's the most maintained one. Right? There are volunteers all over the world that maintain Tor. Tor, by the way, is a United States invention. American Navy invented Tor back in the 60s or 70s. They invented it to help them with what it essentially is meant to do: encrypted, anonymous communication. And little by little, the threat actors became fond of it. And today, it's the most maintained anonymized network with 100 plus proxy machines, volunteers in the world, people that volunteer their servers so that your communication could go through these proxies. And it's like the, you know, traveling salesman riddle. How many options you have to go through 100 proxies, almost infinite. So that's how they keep everything anonymized. And people also contribute to the Tor Foundation, or whatever they call it. People contribute, so it's well maintained, and it's, you know, user friendly and so on.
I think it's also important to note too that Tor in itself is not illegal, right?
Correct.
And so what I don't want people to walk away from the conversation is thinking that everything that happens on the Tor network is nefarious, because that's actually not true. There are legitimate uses for that
you can
type
go
of thing.
Yeah, you can go to your Facebook account on Tor. You can go to, you know, your Gmail account on Tor. If you want to keep everything anonymized, if you think that the government is spying against you, if you are part of, you know, if you want to be completely anonymized, then you want to be a little bit more secure, then you can just use Tor as your regular browser. There's Facebook version in Tor. There's a Gmail version. The CIA, the FBI have official websites on Tor. So it's legitimate, but it's the way you use it is what's illegal about it.
Right. And so if anybody who goes wandering into the Tor network, just be careful what you click on. Find an index page and you see lots of links. Just know that those might take you to things that you don't want to be a part of or even look at. So lots of stuff like that on there. A fascinating discussion, and boy, the time really flew by. But it's really neat to learn about a lot of this stuff and learn about the culture. You have a webinar, I think, that you do that kind of talks about this. So people want to learn more about the dark web, learn more about you. Where can they go? How can they find that?
Yeah, so there's I think one of our webinars, or even a couple of them, are on YouTube. So you can search for Cyberint webinars on YouTube, and you can find a little bit of a tour, if you will, of the dark web, with me talking about some of the subjects as we talked about today, and actually showing you some examples. You can go to our website. There's a lot of cyberint.com. There's a lot of information, blogs. We publish research papers every week on the dark web, on the threat actors, what they do, what's trending. And of course, you can reach out to me, Silutin at cyberint.com, with your questions. And yeah, I think we have a few webinars lined up. I'm not sure about their dates, but you can hit me up and I'll definitely share the information.
Well, very cool. And Jacob, thank you so much for coming on. If people wanted to learn more about Cyberint, where can they go to do that?
Cyberint.com. Just like
plain
it
and
says
simple.
here on the...
Does it have a Tor address too?
There are a few ones, but we should keep them as a secret.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for coming on. A fascinating discussion, and hopefully we'll get you back again someday to talk a little bit more about the dark web, because it's a neat topic, and it's something that, again, a lot of people don't know about. So it's fun to learn. With that, though, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, Angela will be with us on the other side. We're going to break down the show, have a little bit of fun, and I never know what's going to happen. That's why you got to stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. Wow, what an interview! I know it went a little bit long, but I can tell you, we do a lot of interviews on this show, and there, it's a really good one, and you're getting really interesting stuff, and we're just fascinated when like I'm quiet, Rich is quiet, our guest host is quiet, like we're all just like staring at the screen, just taking everything in and learning about all this stuff, because it really is fascinating and really scary and depressing at the same time. But great interview. Awesome having Jacob on. Rich, go ahead and what did you, one of the many things did you take out of that interview?
You know what, and you're absolutely right. It's terrifying and horrifying and depressing, but there is something darkly amusing about the dark web. Whenever I'm talking to people about it or writing about it, it's like this bizarro world version of the world that we live in, where, of the business world we live in specifically, where they have R&D and they have sales and marketing. They actually have customer support. If somebody agrees to pay the ransom, basically, but they don't have a crypto wallet, they don't know how to handle Bitcoin. Like it's not the negotiator who's going to do that with you, because that person has specialized skill. You get handed off to customer support, and they kind of help you, figure out how to pay. And it turns out, I just learned in this conversation with Jacob, they even have a sort of dark web criminal people's court and Judge Wapner, and the two parties come in and they argue. Well, he said he was gonna give me passwords, and I only got 500. I paid for 1,000. Judge Wapner, everything we know in the real world is there too. They're just kind of putting it to evil purposes.
The fact that you get so many dishonest people who have to work together in an honest way is just also kind of mind-boggling at the same time. Angela, what did you take out of that?
Yeah, really the same thing. And then I found it fascinating that there are the marketplaces, where you just go put somebody's personal record, their social security number, their credit card number, their address, whatever information you've got, you just throw it in a cart and check out, like, like I do with my groceries or my Amazon order. That it's, again, scary, but very fascinating, but also very comforting knowing that there are companies like Jacob's company that are, actively working that arena to help bring awareness to those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's scary to think that, like, I am a line item somewhere in a store that someone can just buy. And I don't even get anything for it except for ripped off, which kind of sucks. Freaky stuff. And we were, and we mused for a little while after the interview was over, and we were talking about that. We were just kind of scratching the surface of some of the nefarious things that happen on the dark web, just because we were talking specifically like IT and credentials theft and intellectual property and like that kind of stuff. But there's forums and marketplaces for anything and everything that you can't do legally. So we were talking, there's drugs, and there's buying and selling passports and all kinds of horrifyingly more scary things as well. So it was quite an interview, and thanks to Jacob for coming on and talking to us, and hopefully we'll learn more about that stuff down the road. And after an interview like that, we need a little bit of fun. Rich, I know we're running a little long. I know you got to go, but I'm going to force you to sit in your chair a little bit longer, because we need to we have to end on a high note, right? We can't end on that.
I've got an idea. Off the air, folks, we were saying, well, let's play a quick round of 5 questions. I've got something that might be fun, but also just a little bit quicker. Because do you remember some episodes back, we played a game where we were kind of, it was like dueling breakfast foods. You had to pick between waffles and bacon, and if bacon wins, well, what about bacon versus biscuits? And shall we do this with like junk food? Because it goes pretty quick. I think we each had three of these. Yeah, let's do that. I'm trying to remember the format exactly, but I do remember that was fun. So let's I'll let you start it off, and then that'll spark my memory on how it's supposed to work. So Angela, each time we're going to give you a pair of options. Each time you got to pick one. That one advances to the next round, and then we're going to test it against something else. So I'm going to start out with a tough one. Burritos or pizza?
Pizza.
Okay. All right. Pizza versus cheeseburger.
Ooh, I'll stay with pizza.
Pizza advances. Rich,
because you haven't figured out the one yet.
Let's see if we get there.
There is one.
Let's see what's out there. I mean, we just did burritos, but I'm going to go pizza versus tacos.
You got it. It's tacos. Always tacos. Maybe always. I don't know. Matt, what do you got?
Tacos, huh? Tacos are good. Tacos are good. Side note, though, what kind of taco are we talking?
Oh, I just had these really good Tijuana shrimp tacos from this place by my house that were excellent, and pork belly. Like places that make a really good pork belly chipotle taco. Like just yes, not fast food, not the chipotle tacos, like the taco truck tacos.
All right, shrimp tacos is a tough one, but there are other junk foods out there, and I got 2 more cracks at this. Tacos versus French fries.
I'm gonna stay with tacos on that one.
Still going tacos. I think I'm going to get her on the last one. I got an idea. Rich, your last attempt.
You guys will have to tell me if this is a disqualified, because we've been strictly in the savory food kind of entree area. But if we're talking junk food, tacos versus donuts.
Ooh, man. Always depends on the day and the time of day, but I will take a donut, actually, over a taco right now in this moment.
So you're going donut.
I'm going donut.
She's got a sweet tooth, which is leading me right to where I was
really
going.
do.
to my junk food. Donut versus ice cream.
Ice cream. Ice cream is definitely, because tacos and ice cream are my 2 favorite things.
And it always ends with ice cream. Starts when you're a kid and it never leaves you.
It just never goes away. Yeah.
All right, so I'll end it with a 5 questions. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you, you're heartbroken that the Choco Taco is going away?
No, I could take
Nah.
that one or leave that. But the frozen Snickers, like the ice cream Snickers, I really like those. Those are good.
So what is your last question? Not related to pairing or a composition of the foods. Is it what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Oh, cookie dough. Cookie dough. Probably since I was 5 years old. I love cookie dough ice cream, and usually the Ben and Jerry's. And
Yeah,
I actually read a
cookie
study
dough-
once. I read a study once on a Ben and Jerry's versus Haagen-Dazs cookie dough ice cream, and it was like volume, consistency of the cookie dough, how many pieces there were, how big they were, and Ben and Jerry's definitely won out on that one. But yeah, cookie dough ice cream is a total weakness for me.
Cookie dough is good. My daughter makes these little like homemade cookie dough bites, and they are she just makes them. She's like sticks them in the fridge in her bowl, and they're kind of hard, but you can just like eat them, and they're
You just pop them.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very dangerous. but they're
I've made
delicious.
those. Does she coat them in chocolate?
No,
Or
she
does
doesn't,
she
but she
just
puts
do the
chocolate
dough
chips in
balls?
them.
Yep.
So
Yep. I've made those, and then there are some that you can. There's a melting chocolate you can drizzle over them.
Oh, I'll have to suggest that. That
And
sounds
like an
really
added
good.
treat.
That sounds really good and very unhelpful to my diet. Well, awesome stuff. Rich, why don't you go ahead and real quick and tell us what we might have missed and what might be coming up ahead.
Yeah, well, this is going to be super quick, actually, because in case you missed it, which is the Friday roundup of news that may have missed your attention, written by our own James Gaskin. In case you missed it, it's on its summer schedule now, folks. We're doing it every other week. This is an off week, so tune in next week, and James will catch you up on news from this week and next week. Now, if we're looking ahead, I've already talked about the big thing, which is CompTIA's ChannelCon event. It's going to be the first time they're doing that in person since 2019, basically, and it's right up the road from Matt in Chicago. And I will be there with a bunch of other folks and meeting with all sorts of people and reporting from there.
And it sounds like an awesome week. We will have a show next week, right? I think we're just recording it a day early because I know you're on the road Thursday, right?
Correct. We do have a show next week, and we'll who knows, folks, it might even get to you on Thursday instead of Friday this week.
It's possible. You never know, but it's awesome that we'll have a show next week. So make sure you subscribe everywhere podcasts are found. That we're on the Google, we're on the Apple Podcasts, we're on Stitcher, Spotify. If you like to watch, we're on YouTube. Again, do all those things, hit all the buttons except for the thumbs down button. Leave a comment. That's always helpful. If you have any questions or thoughts or whatever, throw them in the comment section and we will absolutely check them out. So do that. And of course, visit channelpronetwork.com each and every day. Make it your own page. There you'll find the latest resources, white papers, downloads, our articles, all kinds of great information to kind of help you keep you on top of what's going on in the industry, or help you make your business better, make more money, do things more efficiently, all those kinds of things. So make sure you go there each and every day. And wow, Rich, I have like cookie dough bites on the brain. I can't even talk anymore. All I'm thinking about is food. Maybe because I'm really hungry. I don't know. We will see. But big thanks to our guest, Angela Hogaboom, for being on, the Cloud Chick herself. Always great having you back. I hope you had a good time.
Had a great time, always.
Good. And hopefully we will get you back again someday in the near future. Always a delight having you on. If people wanted to connect with you, learn more about you, work with you, where can they go? How can they find you?
They can find me by name on LinkedIn, or I am on the Twitter at the Cloud Chick.
Twitter, the Cloud Chick. And of course, if anybody wants to send her lunch, tacos and donuts are recommended. So just send those her way. And that would be great. So, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Great show. We'll see everybody in episode 235 next week. Thanks for listening and watching.